I stared at the family portrait hanging above my parents' fireplace, my stomach twisting into knots. There was my father, silver-haired and proud. My mother, elegant as always. My two brothers with their perfect wives, and all 7 of their children, except one. My beautiful daughter Lily had been deliberately cropped out of the photo. In that moment, standing in their living room that I'd been paying the mortgage on for years, I made a decision that would change everything. My name is Alexandra, and this is the story of how I finally stood up for the child they never accepted. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Mom, where am I in the family picture? Lily asked, her small voice breaking the uncomfortable silence that had fallen over Sunday dinner. At 8 years old, my daughter was observant enough to notice her absence from the massive portrait my parents had commissioned for their 40th wedding anniversary. The photo dominated the dining room wall, showcasing 3 generations of the Sullivan family, except for one conspicuous omission. My parents exchanged glances across the table. My father cleared his throat while stabbing at his roast beef. My mother adjusted her pearl necklace, a nervous habit she'd developed over decades of uncomfortable conversations. "Well, sweetheart," my mother began in that saccharine tone she reserved for delivering unpleasant news. "You weren't at the professional photo shoot, remember? You had that dance recital that day." I set my fork down with more force than necessary. The recital that was scheduled 3 months in advance. The one I told you about when you were picking the photo shoot date. My father's jaw tightened. Alexandra, not at the dinner table. "When then?" I challenged, feeling Lily's small hand slip into mine under the table. "When should we discuss why my daughter is systematically excluded from family events?" My younger brother Thomas shifted uncomfortably while his wife Vanessa suddenly found her mashed potatoes fascinating. My older brother Richard maintained his practiced diplomatic expression, the same one he used in the corporate boardroom. His wife Caroline didn't even attempt to hide her smirk. "Don't be dramatic," my mother said. "It was simply a scheduling conflict. We can always take another photo with Lily some other time." But we all knew that some other time would never come. It had been this way since I'd announced my pregnancy 8 years ago. Unmarried, halfway through medical school, and determined to raise my child alone after her father made it clear he wanted no part in parenthood. The Sullivan family didn't do scandal. We were old money Boston, with a lineage that traced back to the Mayflower and family traditions as rigid as the New England winters. My parents had weathered my unfortunate situation by telling their friends I was taking a year off to study abroad. When I returned with an infant, they introduced their new granddaughter with tight smiles and careful explanations about my adoption of a child from a distant relative. The lie was absurd. Lily had my eyes, my smile, my stubborn chin. But in my parents' world, perception mattered more than truth. Their friends pretended to believe the story, and my family pretended that Lily was just like their other grandchildren. Except she wasn't, not to them. "May I be excused?" Lily asked, her voice small but steady. At 8, she was already developing the emotional armor needed to survive in a family that viewed her as a mistake. "Of course, sweetheart," I said, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. "Why don't you go explore Grandpa's library? I'll be up in a few minutes." After Lily left, I turned back to my parents. "This can't continue. She notices everything." "What would you have us do, Alexandra?" my father asked. "Rewrite history? You made your choices." "My choices?" I repeated incredulously. "Lily isn't a choice. She's a person. My daughter, your granddaughter." "And we've accepted her," my mother interjected. "We've never denied her place in this family." "Except in photographs, at country club events, in your Christmas cards, and whenever any of your friends from the club are around," I countered. Caroline, Richard's wife, set down her wine glass with deliberate care. Perhaps if you'd chosen a more conventional path, things would be different. The children notice these things, you know. Just yesterday, my Emma asked why Lily doesn't have a daddy. I turned to my sister-in-law, a woman who had married my brother precisely because he checked all the right boxes on her life plan. And what did you tell her, Caroline? The truth, she replied with a thin smile. That some women make impulsive decisions. The dining room fell silent. Even Richard had the decency to look uncomfortable with his wife's directness. I think, I said carefully, pushing back from the table, that Lily and I should go home now. Don't be sensitive, Alexandra, my mother chided. Caroline didn't mean anything by it. But Caroline had. And my mother knew it. And everyone at that table understood the unspoken hierarchy in our family. Thomas and Richard had followed the Y. Sullivan script perfectly. Prestigious universities, respectable careers, marriages to socially appropriate women, children conceived after wedding vows. I had dared to deviate, and 8 years later I was still paying for it. More importantly, my innocent daughter was paying for it too. As I climbed the stairs to retrieve Lily from the library, I reflected on how much I had compromised over the years, desperate to maintain my daughter's connection to her extended family. I'd accepted their thinly veiled criticism, their helpful suggestions about finding Lily a proper father figure, their convenient exclusions when certain friends were visiting. I'd swallowed my pride and my anger because I believed family mattered, that, despite their flaws, having grandparents and uncles and cousins would enrich Lily's life. I found my daughter curled in my father's leather armchair, a heavy astronomy book open on her lap. She didn't look up when I entered, her small finger tracing the outline of a constellation on the page. Ready to go home, sweetheart? I asked. Why don't they like me, Mom? She asked, still studying the stars on the page. The question hit me like a physical blow. I crossed the room and knelt beside the chair, gently closing the book and taking her hands in mine. Lily, look at me, I said, waiting until her eyes, so like mine, met my gaze. They don't dislike you. They dislike the choices I made. And that is their loss, not yours. You are perfect exactly as you are. But why do they have to punish me for your choices? She asked, with a clarity that broke my heart. That doesn't seem fair. Out of the mouths of babes. I had no adequate response because she was right. It wasn't fair. And in that moment, kneeling on my father's imported Persian rug, surrounded by leather-bound books that celebrated family legacies, I felt something shift inside me. For 8 years, I had been trying to earn my family's full acceptance of my daughter. I had been polite, accommodating, grateful for the crumbs of inclusion they offered. It's not fair, I agreed finally, and I've let it go on too long. Driving home that night, with Lily asleep in the back seat, I made a decision. Something had to change, and it wasn't going to be my daughter or my parenting. For too long, I had allowed my family's conditional acceptance to shape our lives. I had given them power they didn't deserve. And in doing so, I had tacitly endorsed their treatment of Lily. What made the situation even more absurd was that 3 years ago, when my parents had faced financial difficulty after my father's business partner embezzled company funds, I had stepped in to help. My medical career had flourished despite the early challenges of single motherhood. As a neurologist specializing in pediatric epilepsy, I'd developed a groundbreaking treatment protocol that had brought me international recognition and substantial financial rewards. When my parents were on the verge of losing their historic Beacon Hill home, the Sullivan family seat for 4 generations, I had quietly assumed their mortgage payments. They had accepted my money while continuing to treat my daughter as a footnote in the family narrative. The irony wasn't lost on me. That night, after tucking Lily into bed, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea and really examined the past 8 years. I had been so focused on maintaining family ties for Lily's benefit that I hadn't considered whether those ties were actually beneficial. My brother's children treated her with the subtle cruelty that children reserve for those they perceive as different or less than. My sisters-in-law alternated between pitying condescension and outright frostiness. My parents offered affection that was always tempered by an undercurrent of disappointment. Was this really the family environment I wanted for my bright, sensitive daughter? The next morning, I called my financial advisor. "Harrison, I need to make some changes to my automatic payments," I explained after exchanging pleasantries. "Of course, Dr. Sullivan. What did you have in mind?" "I want to cancel the monthly transfer to Boston Heritage Bank," I said, referring to the account I'd set up specifically for my parents' mortgage payments. "May I ask why?" Harrison had been managing my finances since before Lily was born. He knew my family situation intimately. "I'm redirecting those funds," I explained. "I'd like to establish a college trust for Lily, and I'm thinking of buying a new home." "A new home?" Harrison sounded surprised. "Your current place is lovely, and in a prime location for your practice." "Yes, but I'm considering locations with better school districts," I explained, "and perhaps somewhere with a bit more distance from my parents." Harrison was quiet for a moment. "I understand. I'll make those changes immediately and send you some options for the trust fund structure." After hanging up, I felt lighter than I had in years. No grand confrontation, no dramatic declaration. Just a quiet reclaiming of boundaries that should have been established long ago. Of course, the ripple effects would soon follow. It took exactly 3 weeks for my parents to realize something was amiss. I received the call on a Wednesday afternoon between patient consultations. "Alexandra, there seems to be some mistake with the mortgage payment," my father said without preamble when I answered. His voice carried that particular tone of controlled panic that Boston Brahmin men reserve for financial discussions. "It's not a mistake," I replied calmly, closing the door to my office for privacy. A weighted silence filled the line. "I don't understand." "I'm no longer covering your mortgage payments," I explained. "I've decided to redirect those funds toward Lily's future." "This is about Sunday dinner, isn't it?" He sounded incredulous. "You're punishing us over a photograph?" "No, Dad. This isn't punishment. This is a realignment of my priorities. For 8 years, I've financially supported your lifestyle while you've treated my daughter as an inconvenience. That arrangement no longer works for me." "Your mother?" "And I have welcomed that child into our home," he countered, voice rising. "We've included her in family gatherings. We've given her birthday and Christmas gifts." "That child," I repeated coolly, "has a name. She's your granddaughter, and token inclusion isn't acceptance. This is ridiculous. We'll lose the house." "You have options," I pointed out. "You can take out a new mortgage. You can sell the house and downsize. You can ask Richard or Thomas for help. You're not without resources, Dad." "After everything we've done for you," I cut him off, something I rarely dared to do. "What exactly have you done for me, Dad? When I told you I was pregnant, you suggested I take care of it quietly to avoid embarrassment. When I refused, you and Mom told everyone I was studying abroad. When I graduated from medical school, with honors, despite being a single mother, neither of you attended the ceremony because it conflicted with the Newport Yacht Club regatta. So please tell me what I'm supposed to be grateful for." My father's breathing was the only sound for several long moments. When he spoke again, his voice had that dangerous quietness I remembered from childhood scoldings. "You're making a serious mistake, Alexandra." "No, Dad. I made a mistake 8 years ago when I let you convince me that your conditional acceptance was better than nothing. Lily deserves better than that. And frankly, so do I." I ended the call and sat motionless. At my desk, my heart pounding but my mind curiously calm. In all my 35 years, I had never spoken to my father that way. The Sullivan family operated on unspoken rules and passive aggression, not direct confrontation. I had just violated a lifetime of conditioning, and strangely, it felt like freedom. My office phone buzzed again almost immediately. "Dr. Sullivan, your mother is on line 1, my assistant announced. "She says it's urgent." "Please tell her I'm with a patient and will call her back," I replied. I needed time to collect my thoughts before round 2. By evening, my phone had accumulated 6 missed calls from my mother, 3 from my father, and 1 each from Richard and Thomas. I had also received an email from my parents' attorney, formally requesting a meeting to discuss financial arrangements. The Sullivan machine was mobilizing quickly. As I prepared dinner that night, Lily's favorite pasta with broccoli trees mixed in, I considered how to explain our changing family situation to my daughter. She was perceptive enough to notice when we stopped attending Sunday dinners, and she would certainly have questions about why she wasn't seeing her cousins anymore. "Mom, can I have apple juice with dinner?" Lily asked, climbing onto her designated kitchen stool to watch me cook. Her dark hair was pulled into a messy ponytail, and there was a smudge of marker on her cheek from her afternoon art project. "Of course, sweetheart," I replied, reaching for a glass. "Lily, I wanted to talk to you about something important." She looked up with those solemn eyes that always seemed to see straight through adult pretenses. "Is it about Grandma and Grandpa not liking me?" I nearly dropped the juice container. "What makes you say that?" She shrugged with the world-weary resignation that no 8-year-old should possess. "They never hug me like they hug Emma and the others, and they forgot my birthday last year until you reminded them. And I'm not in the big picture." I set down the juice and moved to stand directly in front of her, placing my hands gently on her shoulders. "Lily, I need you to understand something very important. There is absolutely nothing wrong with you. The problem isn't you. It's the grown-ups who can't see how amazing you are." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Like how Grandma always asks when you're going to find me a dad?" she asked. I nodded, simultaneously heartbroken that she'd noticed and proud of her perception. Exactly. Grandma and Grandpa grew up thinking families only look one way. They don't understand that families come in all different shapes. Like Zoe's 2 moms? Or Miguel's grandma who raises him? Precisely, I agreed. And because they don't understand, we're going to be spending less time with them for a while. But that doesn't mean you won't have family who loves you exactly as you are. Lily considered this with the careful deliberation she applied to all new information. "Will I still see my cousins?" This was trickier territory. While I had no intention of using Lily's relationships as leverage, I also knew that unsupervised interaction with her cousins, who had absorbed their parents' attitudes, might be harmful. "We'll find ways for you to see your cousins," I promised. "But we might look for new friends too. In fact, I've been thinking we might want to move to a new neighborhood where you could meet lots of different kids." Her eyes widened. "Really? Could I have a room with stars on the ceiling?" I laughed, relieved by her adaptability. "I think that could be arranged." As we ate dinner, Lily chattered about what her dream bedroom would look like, and which of her toys would need special places in a new home. I marveled at her resilience, how quickly she could pivot from processing rejection to embracing new possibilities. Children, I reflected, often navigate emotional terrain with more wisdom than adults, unencumbered by years of calcified expectations and social pretenses. After Lily went to bed, I finally checked my messages. My father had moved from anger to financial threats, reminding me that I was still a beneficiary in their will and suggesting that my rash actions could have permanent consequences. My mother had progressed from bewilderment to emotional manipulation, leaving a tearful message about how she never thought her own daughter would try to make her homeless in her golden years. Richard's message was more measured, offering to mediate the situation in a way that would preserve family harmony while addressing legitimate concerns. Thomas, always the follower, had simply called to say that everyone was upset and couldn't we all just talk this through. I deleted them all without responding. Instead, I opened my laptop and began researching neighborhoods with excellent schools, diverse communities, and no connection whatsoever to the Sullivan family sphere of influence. By midnight, I had compiled a list of possibilities and emailed it to my realtor with a request to begin viewing properties as soon as possible. Before closing my computer, I checked my professional email one last time. There was a message from Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka at Tokyo Medical University, following up on a conversation we'd had at a conference 3 months earlier. He was assembling an international research team for a groundbreaking study on genetic markers for treatment-resistant epilepsy and wanted me to consider a visiting professor position for the following academic year. I stared at the screen, my mind racing with possibilities. A year in Tokyo. A complete break from Boston society and Sullivan family dynamics. An opportunity for Lily to experience a different culture, and for me to contribute to research that could help thousands of children. It was nearly 2 a.m. in Boston, which meant it was mid-afternoon in Tokyo. Before I could second-guess myself, I dialed Dr. Tanaka's number. "Dr. Sullivan," he answered warmly. What a pleasant surprise! I had not expected such a prompt response to my email. "Your timing is perfect, actually," I replied. "I'm very interested in discussing the position further, for both myself and my daughter." We spoke for nearly an hour, going over the details of the research opportunity, the living arrangements the university could provide, and the international school where Lily could continue her education. By the time we concluded the call, I had verbally accepted the position pending final contract review. I went to bed that night with a profound sense of peace. For years, I had been trying to retrofit my life and my daughter's existence into the rigid framework of Sullivan family expectations. I had been fighting for acceptance within a system that was fundamentally designed to exclude anyone who deviated from its narrowly defined parameters of success. But what if the answer wasn't to fix a broken system, but to build something entirely new? What if, instead of constantly seeking validation from people determined to withhold it, I created a life where both Lily and I were intrinsically valued? The next morning, I woke to an email from my parents' attorney requesting an urgent family meeting to be held that evening at my parents' home. All family members would be present to resolve the current financial situation in a manner befitting the Sullivan name. I replied with a simple one-line message. "I am available to meet at my office tomorrow at 2 p.m. This is not negotiable." Predictably, this caused another flurry of messages about family loyalty and tradition. I ignored them all. If my family wanted to discuss anything with me, it would be on my terms, in my territory, and with my boundaries firmly in place. To my mild surprise, at precisely 2 p.m. the following day, my parents, both brothers and their wives, filed into the conference room adjacent to my medical practice. They looked like a delegation from a foreign country, unified in purpose despite their internal differences, determined to present a solid front against the defector in their midst. I had deliberately arranged the seating so that I was at the head of the table, a position my father typically assumed in family gatherings. It was a small power move, but a meaningful one. I had also asked my practice administrator to interrupt after exactly 1 hour, regardless of where the conversation stood. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice steady and professional, the same tone I used when delivering difficult diagnoses to patients' families. "I understand you have concerns about my decision to discontinue financial support for my parents' mortgage. I'm willing to discuss this, but first I want to be clear about why we're here." My father started to speak, but I held up my hand, another unprecedented action in our family dynamic. "For 8 years," I continued, "I have accepted a situation that should have been unacceptable from the beginning. My daughter, your granddaughter, your niece, has been treated as less than. She has been excluded, marginalized, and made to feel that her very existence is somehow shameful." "That's not true," my mother interjected. "We've always—" "Always what, Mom?" Always remembered her birthday 2 weeks late? Always seated her at the kids' table even when her older cousins were invited to sit with the adults? Always forgotten to include her in family photographs. Those were oversights, Richard said smoothly, slipping into his corporate negotiation mode. Not intentional exclusions. Really? 9 oversights in 8 years? The statistical probability of that many accidental exclusions approaches 0, I replied. But that's beside the point now. I've made my decision. I'm no longer financially supporting a family system that emotionally damages my child. So you're just going to let your parents lose their home? Thomas asked, genuine confusion in his voice. Of all my family members, he was perhaps the least calculating, simply following the family script without questioning its underlying values. Their financial situation is not my responsibility, I said calmly. Just as my life choices were not their responsibility, according to them. We can't have it both ways. This is blackmail, Caroline said coldly. You're using your financial position to force your parents to accept your situation. I turned to my sister-in-law with a smile that contained no warmth. That's an interesting perspective, Caroline. I see it differently. I'm simply aligning my resources with my values. Something we all do every day, don't we? What exactly do you want? My father asked, cutting through the tension. Always the businessman, he was looking for the bottom line, the negotiating point where we could reach an agreement. I don't want anything from you, I replied honestly. That's what none of you seem to understand. I'm not using this as leverage to gain acceptance or inclusion. I'm simply removing myself from a harmful system. In fact, Lily and I will be relocating to Tokyo next month. I've accepted a visiting professor position at Tokyo Medical University. The shocked silence that followed was almost comical. This was clearly not the response they had anticipated. They had come prepared for negotiations, concessions, perhaps even confrontation, but not for complete disengagement. Japan? My mother finally managed, but that's so far away. What about family holidays? What about maintaining Lily's connections? To her cousins? The same connections you've been so eager to foster over the years? I asked pointedly. Those haven't been particularly meaningful, have they? Richard leaned forward, his expression calculating. Let's be practical about this, Alex. If your concern is Lily's college fund, I'm sure Mom and Dad would be willing to establish a trust for her education equivalent to what they've set up for our children. Isn't that right? He looked at our parents expectantly. My father nodded quickly. Of course, we should have done that already. We can make it retroactive, add what we've contributed to the other grandchildren's funds over the years. I smiled, genuinely amused by their presumption that this was a financial negotiation. That's not necessary. Lily's future is secure. I've already established a trust fund that will more than cover her educational needs. Then what do you want? My mother asked, frustration evident in her voice. I already told you I don't want anything. This isn't a negotiation where you offer concessions and we reach a compromise. This is me informing you of decisions I've already made. So you're just done with this family? Thomas asked, his expression genuinely hurt. Of all my siblings, he had been the least judgmental about my pregnancy, though he had never actively defended me either. I softened slightly. I'm done with a family system that ranks children based on their parents' adherence to social expectations. I'm done pretending that token inclusion is the same as acceptance. I'm done teaching my daughter that she should be grateful for crumbs of affection. That's not fair, my mother protested. We love Lily. Do you? I asked quietly. Do you love her for exactly who she is? Or do you love the idea of what she could be if her existence were more conventional? Because there's a profound difference. Before anyone could respond, my administrator knocked and entered as instructed. Dr. Sullivan, I'm sorry to interrupt, but your next appointment has arrived. Thank you, Janet, I said, rising from my chair. My family was just leaving. The looks of disbelief around the table would have been comical under different circumstances. The Sullivans were not accustomed to being dismissed. They were the ones who typically controlled the timing and terms of engagements. This discussion isn't finished, my father stated flatly. Actually, it is, I replied. My decision is made. You're welcome to contact my attorney if you have questions about the termination of financial support. Otherwise, I'll have my assistant send details about our move to Tokyo once arrangements are finalized. As they filed out, expressions ranging from anger to confusion on their faces, I felt not triumph, but a profound sense of peace. This wasn't about winning a family power struggle. It was about finally creating healthy boundaries after years of compromise that had benefited no one, least of all my daughter. That evening, as Lily and I looked through a children's book about Japan, planning our upcoming adventure, she asked a question that caught me off guard. Mom, are we running away? I set the book aside and considered her question carefully. Why do you ask that, sweetheart? She shrugged, picking at a loose thread on her pajama sleeve. In stories, when people go far away, sometimes they're running away from problems instead of fixing them. Out of the mouths of babes, indeed. I pulled her closer, wrapping my arm around her small shoulders. That's a really thoughtful question, I acknowledged. I don't think we're running away. I think we're running toward something better. Sometimes fixing a problem means trying to make a broken thing work, and sometimes it means building something new instead. She nodded solemnly, processing this distinction. So we're building something new? Exactly, I confirmed. We're creating a life where both of us can thrive, where we're surrounded by people who value us exactly as we are. And Grandma and Grandpa might learn to do that too someday? She asked, her hopeful expression reminding me that despite everything, she still craved their acceptance. They might, I allowed, not wanting to extinguish her hope, but also not wanting to create unrealistic expectations. People can change, but they have to want to change. We can't make that happen for them. As I tucked her into bed later, I reflected on how this 8-year-old child often displayed more emotional intelligence than the roomful of accomplished adults I'd faced earlier that day. Lily understood intuitively what my family refused to acknowledge, that relationships should be built on authentic acceptance, not conditional tolerance. In the weeks that followed, as we prepared for our move to Tokyo, my family made various attempts to delay or derail our plans. My father offered to restructure the mortgage arrangement so that I would have more oversight of family financial decisions. My mother orchestrated an elaborate birthday party for one of Richard's children and made a point of including Lily prominently in all the festivities, complete with professional photographs where she was centered rather than marginalized. These belated efforts at inclusion might have swayed me years earlier, when I was desperate for any sign that my family might fully accept my daughter. Now, they only reinforced my conviction that establishing distance was the right decision. Their sudden change in behavior demonstrated that they had always been capable of treating Lily with genuine inclusion. They had simply chosen not to until faced with consequences. The day before our departure for Tokyo, I received an unexpected visitor at our half-packed Cambridge apartment. My father, without my mother or the usual family entourage, stood awkwardly at my doorstep, holding a small wrapped package. "May I come in?" he asked, uncharacteristic uncertainty in his voice. I hesitated, then stepped aside to allow him entry. The apartment was in disarray, with labeled boxes and suitcases occupying most of the available space. "Lily is at her friend's house for a goodbye play date," I explained as he surveyed the packing chaos. "She'll be back in an hour." He nodded, carefully navigating around a stack of boxes to reach the small section of living room still furnished with a couch and coffee table. He sat stiffly, the wrapped package balanced on his knee. "Your mother doesn't know I'm here," he said after an uncomfortable silence. She's still processing everything. I remained standing, unwilling to settle into a conversation that implied reconciliation. "What can I do for you, Dad?" He cleared his throat, a nervous gesture I'd rarely seen from him. William Sullivan, former CEO and Boston's social fixture, was not a man accustomed to uncertainty. "I've been thinking about what you said," he began, his voice grave, "about how we've treated Lily over the years. I wanted to believe we had been, fair, that we had made appropriate accommodations given the circumstances." I raised an eyebrow but didn't interrupt. "Yesterday, I was in the attic looking for some old financial documents, and I found a box of photo albums from when you and your brothers were children." He paused, seemingly gathering his thoughts. "There's this series of pictures from your 5th birthday party. You were wearing a purple dress with butterflies, and you were so excited about the teddy bear we gave you that you carried it everywhere for months afterward." I remembered that teddy bear, Mr. Buttons, I'd named him. He had been my constant companion throughout childhood. I looked at those pictures of you, so happy, so innocent, and I tried to imagine someone making you feel less valued because of choices I had made. His voice grew unsteady. I couldn't bear the thought. And yet, that's exactly what we've done to Lily. To your daughter, my granddaughter. The raw emotion in his voice caught me off guard. In 35 years, I had never seen my father express such vulnerable self-reflection. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "We're leaving tomorrow." "I know," he acknowledged. "I'm not asking you to change your plans. I'm not even asking for forgiveness, although I hope someday that might be possible. He looked down at the package on his knee. "I wanted to give this to Lily, and to tell you that I'm sorry, truly sorry." He held out the package, and after a moment's hesitation, I accepted it. "It's a family album," he explained as I carefully unwrapped it. I spent the last 3 days going through all our photographs, finding every picture of Lily that exists, even the ones where she was in the background or partially cropped out. There aren't as many as there should be, but it's a start. I opened the album to find a chronological collection of Lily's presence in our family, from her infant days to recent months. My father had labeled each photo with dates and occasions, and in the back of the album was an envelope. "What's this?" I asked, removing a legal document. "I've established a trust in Lily's name," he explained. "It's equivalent to what we've provided for each of the other grandchildren, with additional funds to make up for the years we didn't contribute. It's not contingent on anything. Not on your return, not on maintaining contact. It's hers, unconditionally." I stared at him, trying to reconcile this man with the father who had suggested I take care of my pregnancy 8 years ago. "People can change," I had told Lily, "but they have to want to change." "I know it's not enough," he continued when I didn't respond. "I know we can't make up for years of making her feel less than, but I hope it might be a beginning." I closed the album carefully, setting it on the coffee table between us. "I appreciate the gesture, Dad. I do. But you're right. It doesn't erase the past, and I need to protect Lily's future." He nodded, accepting this without argument. "Will you let us know how you both are doing in Tokyo, even if it's just an occasional email?" I considered this simple request. Complete severance wasn't necessary for healthy boundaries. "I can do that," I agreed. "And perhaps we can arrange a video call for birthdays and holidays." Slowly. Relief washed over his features. "Thank you, Alexandra." He stood, preparing to leave, then paused. "You're a better parent than I was. Lily is lucky to have you." After he left, I sat alone in my half-packed apartment, turning the pages of the photo album he had created. The effort was genuine, even if it had come years too late. People can change, but transformation rarely happens without catalyst or consequence. The next day, as our plane lifted off from Boston Logan International Airport, I held Lily's hand and watched the New England coastline recede below us. We weren't running away from a problem. We were running toward a future where both of us could be valued for exactly who we were, not who others wanted us to be. "Mom?" Lily asked, looking up from her new Japanese phrase book. "Are you sad?" I smiled at her, this remarkable child who had taught me more about courage and authenticity than anyone else in my life. "No, sweetheart, I'm hopeful." "Me too," she agreed, returning to her studies with characteristic determination. "I'm going to learn all the Japanese words for stars and constellations first." As the plane carried us toward our new beginning, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to this moment. The road to self-worth is rarely straight or simple. It often requires difficult choices, painful boundaries, and the courage to envision a different kind of life than the one prescribed by family legacy or social expectation. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is to stop fighting for acceptance where it is conditionally given, and start building spaces where acceptance is the foundation, not the prize. Sometimes we need to cancel more than mortgage payments. We need to cancel the belief that we must earn the right to be fully seen and valued. Tokyo greeted us with a symphony of contradictions: ancient temples nestled between gleaming skyscrapers, meditative gardens hidden behind bustling commercial streets, and a society that honored tradition while pioneering technological innovation. The culture shock was immediate and exhilarating. We arrived in early spring, just as the cherry blossoms were beginning to bloom, painting the city in delicate shades of pink and white that seemed to welcome us to our new life. Dr. Tanaka had arranged temporary housing in the university's international faculty apartments, a modest but comfortable two-bedroom unit in a modern building within walking distance of both the Medical Research Center and Lily's new international school. The apartment featured large windows with views of a small neighborhood park, built-in storage that made efficient use of the limited space, and modern amenities that eased our transition to Japanese daily life. Lily, with the remarkable adaptability of childhood, embraced our new surroundings with enthusiasm. While I spent the first week navigating administrative paperwork and orientation meetings at the university, she explored every corner of our apartment building, charmed the elderly security guard with her earnest attempts at basic Japanese phrases, and carefully arranged her belongings in her new bedroom, including the constellation-patterned ceiling decals I had surprised her with. On our first night, "Mom, did you know that in Japan they have different star stories than we do?" Lily informed me one evening as we ate takeout sushi at our small kitchen table. "Mrs. Yamada, she's the lady who lives next door, told me that the Summer Triangle is actually a story about two lovers separated by the Milky Way, who can only meet once a year on a bridge of birds." "That's the legend of Tanabata," I explained, impressed by her quick absorption of cultural details. "There's a festival in July to celebrate it. Can we go?" Her eyes lit up with excitement. "Absolutely," I promised, marveling at how easily she embraced new experiences. While I had worried about the impact of such a dramatic life change on her development, Lily seemed to be thriving in the novelty and stimulation of our new environment. My professional transition proved equally positive. Tokyo Medical University's Pediatric Neurology Department was at the forefront of genetic research into treatment-resistant epilepsy, and my groundbreaking work in the States had earned me immediate respect among my new colleagues. Dr. Tanaka had assembled a diverse international team of researchers, combining Japanese precision and methodical research practices with innovative approaches from around the world. "Your timing is fortuitous, Dr. Sullivan," Dr. Tanaka told me during my first week. "We've just received approval for the genetic sequencing phase of our study. Your expertise in correlating genetic markers with treatment response will be invaluable." The research was exhilarating, the kind of cutting-edge work that could potentially transform treatment protocols for thousands of children with intractable seizure disorders. I threw myself into the project with focused intensity, grateful for the intellectual challenge and the sense of purpose it provided. For the first time in years, I found myself defined by my contributions rather than by my family connections or my status as a single mother. Within weeks, Lily and I had established new routines that bore little resemblance to our life in Boston. Mornings began early with breakfast prepared from ingredients purchased at the local market: fish, rice, miso soup, and fresh fruits that Lily initially approached with suspicion but gradually came to enjoy. We walked together to the international school, where Lily was enrolled in a program that combined standard curriculum with Japanese language and cultural studies. Most of my friends have 2 or 3 different countries in their families, Lily reported after her first week. Aiko's mom is Japanese, but her dad is from Australia. Miguel has parents from Brazil and Spain. Nobody thinks it's weird that I just have you. The casual observation highlighted what had been missing in Boston, an environment where our family configuration was unremarkable rather than exceptional. At her international school, Lily was simply one variation among many. Diverse family structures, neither pitied nor singled out for her lack of a father. Afternoons and evenings developed their own rhythm. Lily attended the school's extended program 3 days a week, participating in science club and beginning Japanese lessons, while I worked late at the research center. On the other 2 weekdays, I arranged my schedule to finish earlier, and we explored our new city together, visiting museums, parks, and neighborhood shops, gradually expanding our mental map of Tokyo beyond the immediate vicinity of our apartment. Weekends became adventures in cultural immersion. We visited historic temples where Lily delighted in learning proper etiquette for offering prayers and ringing ceremonial bells. We navigated crowded markets where vendors offered samples of unfamiliar foods and patiently explained their culinary traditions. We discovered neighborhood festivals with traditional music, dance performances, and games that Lily eagerly participated in despite language barriers. "You're adapting remarkably well," commented Emma Reynolds, an Australian neurosurgeon whose daughter attended the same school as Lily. We had struck up a friendship after discovering our children shared an interest in astronomy. Most expat families take months to find their footing here. We were sitting at a small cafe near the school, watching our daughters compare collectible erasers shaped like miniature foods, a popular trend among the elementary students. "I think it helps that we were ready for a complete change," I replied, stirring my matcha latte thoughtfully. "We didn't come with expectations that Tokyo should conform to our previous life." "Running from something?" Emma asked perceptively, then immediately held up her hands. "Sorry, occupational hazard. Surgeons tend to be direct." I smiled, appreciating her forthright manner. "You're not wrong. We needed distance from family dynamics that weren't healthy for Lily." Emma nodded without pressing for details. "Family can be complicated, even with an ocean between you. My parents still managed to express disappointment in my life choices from 16,000 kilometers away." That simple acknowledgement of shared experience, offered without judgment or excessive curiosity, marked the beginning of my first genuine friendship in Tokyo. Unlike the carefully calibrated social connections of Boston society, where relationships were often evaluated based on potential advantages or liabilities, my friendships in Tokyo developed organically around shared interests and compatible personalities. Through Emma, I met other international medical professionals and their families. Through Lily's school, we connected with diverse families navigating similar cross-cultural experiences. Through my research team, I found intellectual peers who valued my contributions rather than my pedigree. Gradually, we built a social circle that felt authentic in a way my Boston relationships never had. Connections based on mutual appreciation rather than obligation or history. 3 months into our Tokyo life, I realized that neither Lily nor I had experienced a moment of genuine homesickness. I had maintained my promise to send occasional updates to my parents. Brief, polite emails with carefully selected photos of Lily at school events or visiting Tokyo landmarks. My father responded with equally measured messages, expressing appropriate interest in our activities without pressuring for more engagement. My mother occasionally added brief postscripts to his emails. Her comments focused almost exclusively on hoping we were eating properly and getting enough rest. Her default expressions of concern when direct emotional communication felt too risky. My brother's responses varied. Richard maintained professional courtesy, acknowledging my updates. With the same efficient brevity he probably applied to business correspondence. Thomas, somewhat surprisingly, showed genuine interest in our adventures, asking specific questions about Japanese culture and sending Lily electronic gift cards for international bookstores so she could continue building her collection of astronomy books with Japanese constellations. The emotional distance provided by our physical separation allowed these exchanges to remain cordial without the undercurrents that had poisoned our in-person interactions. I could view these communications with clinical detachment, responding when appropriate without allowing them to disrupt the new life we were building. That detachment was tested 4 months into our stay when I received an unexpected email from my mother with the subject line, "Important Family News." The message was brief and uncharacteristically direct. "Alexandra, I'm writing to let you know that your father experienced a minor heart attack last Tuesday. The doctors have performed an angioplasty and inserted 2 stents. He is expected to make a full recovery, but has been advised to reduce his workload and stress levels. He doesn't want you to worry or feel that you need to return, but I thought you should be informed. Your mother." I stared at the screen for several long moments, trying to process both the information and my reaction to it. The practical physician, in me, immediately assessed the medical situation. Minor heart attack with successful intervention, good prognosis with lifestyle modifications. The daughter in me felt a complicated mixture of concern, guilt, and wariness about potential emotional manipulation. After careful consideration, I composed a reply expressing appropriate concern, asking for specific medical details that would help me better understand his condition, and offering to consult with colleagues in cardiology if they desired a second opinion. I deliberately avoided any mention of returning to Boston or altering our plans in Tokyo. My mother's response came quickly, too quickly, suggesting she had been waiting expectantly for my reaction. She provided the requested medical information, confirming my assessment that his condition was serious but not critical, and added, "Your father would never ask this of you, but I know it would lift his spirits immensely if you and Lily could visit, even briefly." The doctors emphasized that emotional well-being is crucial to his recovery. The implicit guilt trip was typical of my mother's approach, not directly demanding my compliance, but strongly suggesting that my father's health hinged on my response to her request. In the past, such tactics had often succeeded in bringing me back into the family fold, particularly when paired with medical concerns that triggered my professional instincts to help. That evening, after Lily was asleep, I sat on our small balcony overlooking the quiet Tokyo street below, considering my options. 6 months ago, I would have immediately begun researching flights, rearranging my work schedule, and preparing Lily for a return to Boston. I would have set aside my own boundaries out of duty and concern, regardless of the emotional cost to myself or my daughter. But Tokyo had changed me in subtle yet significant ways. The physical distance had provided clarity about family dynamics that had been difficult to recognize when immersed in them. The professional respect I'd found at the university had strengthened my sense of self-worth, independent of family validation. The diverse community we'd built had demonstrated what healthy relationships actually looked like, mutually supportive rather than hierarchical or conditional. After thoughtful consideration, I sent my mother a different response than she expected. "I'm glad to hear Dad's medical care is proceeding appropriately. I've consulted with a colleague here who specializes in post-cardiac care, and his treatment plan sounds exactly right for this situation. Lily and I will arrange a video call this weekend at a time convenient for Dad's recovery schedule. Please let me know what would work best. As for visiting in person, that isn't possible right now. We're in the middle of the academic year and research cycle. However, as we previously discussed, we had planned to evaluate our situation here after the first year. We can certainly consider a visit to Boston during that assessment period, though that would still be several months away. I'm sending healing thoughts for Dad's swift recovery. Alexandra. I closed my laptop with a sense of calm resolution. The response was compassionate without being capitulating, maintaining appropriate boundaries while still acknowledging family connection. It was the response of a woman who valued her father's health without sacrificing her own well-being or her daughter's stability. The video call that weekend was unexpectedly positive. My father, looking paler than usual but otherwise alert, seemed genuinely delighted to see Lily enthusiastically demonstrate her growing Japanese vocabulary and show off the science project she'd completed on the solar system. My mother hovered anxiously in the background, occasionally interjecting questions about our diet and living conditions, but generally allowing the conversation to flow naturally. "You look well, Alexandra," my father observed during a moment, when Lily had run to her room to retrieve a book she wanted to show him. "The research position must agree with you." "It does," I acknowledged. "The work is groundbreaking, and the collaborative environment is exceptional." He nodded thoughtfully. "And Lily seems to be thriving." "She is. The international school has been perfect for her. Diverse, challenging, supportive. She's making friends from all over the world." A flicker of emotion crossed his face. Regret, perhaps, or recognition of what had been missed in Boston. "That's good. That's very good." When Lily returned and the conversation shifted back to her experiences, I noticed something subtle but significant. My father asked her questions about her interest rather than her performance. What she enjoyed about astronomy rather than what grades she was receiving. What she found most interesting about Japanese culture rather than how quickly she was learning the language. He was seeing her as a person rather than as an achievement or reflection of family status. It was a small shift, but a meaningful one. The days following the video call brought an unexpected development. A package arrived from Boston containing a carefully selected collection of astronomy books, including several rare volumes on Japanese astronomical traditions that must have required significant effort to locate. The accompanying note, handwritten by my father, was simple but direct. For Lily to continue her exploration of the stars, no matter where she views them from. With love, Grandpa Lily was delighted with the gift, immediately immersing herself in the beautiful illustrations and historical star charts. I was cautiously encouraged by the gesture, not just the generosity of the gift itself, but the thoughtfulness behind it. My father had paid attention to Lily's specific interests rather than sending a generic present. He had signed the note Grandpa rather than the more formal grandfather he had always used previously, and he had addressed it directly to her, acknowledging her as an individual worthy of personal connection. Over the following weeks, a tentative new pattern emerged. My father began sending Lily emails with interesting astronomical facts or articles, which she eagerly responded to with her own observations and questions. These exchanges were brief but consistent, focused entirely on their shared interest without reference to family dynamics or past tensions. My mother occasionally added postscripts with recipes she thought we might enjoy trying, or observations about Boston weather compared to what she had researched about Tokyo's climate. I maintained my role as gatekeeper, monitoring these communications, while allowing them to develop their own authentic rhythm. The ocean between us served as a buffer that allowed for connection without the pressure of physical proximity and entrenched patterns of interaction. Distance created safety for new relationship dynamics to emerge. 6 months into our Tokyo adventure, Dr. Tanaka called me into his office to discuss our research progress and my role on the team. "Your contributions have exceeded our highest expectations, Dr. Sullivan," he said, his formal manner belied by the warmth in his eyes. "The correlation analysis protocol you developed has accelerated our timeline significantly. The board is impressed." Thank you, I replied. The team has been exceptional to work with. He nodded, then shifted slightly in his chair, a subtle indication that the conversation was about to change direction. I understand your visiting professor arrangement was initially for 1 year, with potential for extension. That's correct. We would like to offer you a permanent position as research director for the pediatric neurology department, he said without preamble. With expanded responsibilities and, of course, appropriate compensation adjustments. The offer caught me by surprise. While I had hoped for an extension of my visiting position, a permanent directorship represented an entirely different level of commitment, both from the university to me and from me to Japan. This is unexpected, I admitted, and very flattering. Take time to consider, Dr. Tanaka advised. I understand such a decision involves many factors, particularly with your daughter to consider. The official offer documents will be ready next week, but I wanted to give you advance notice. That evening, I shared the news with Lily over dinner at her favorite ramen shop, a tiny establishment near our apartment where the elderly owner had taken a grandfatherly interest in her, always adding an extra fish cake decorated to look like a star to her bowl. Does that mean we could stay in Japan forever? She asked, expertly manipulating her chopsticks, a skill she had mastered far more quickly than I had. Not necessarily forever, I clarified. But for several more years, certainly. How would you feel about that? She considered the question with her characteristic thoughtfulness, slurping noodles while she organized her thoughts. I like it here, she said finally. People see me for me, not for what's missing. Her simple observation captured precisely what had changed in our lives. In Tokyo, we were defined by our present reality rather than by how we deviated from traditional expectations. We were valued for our actual qualities and contributions rather than measured against an arbitrary standard of family completeness. What about you, Mom? Lily asked, displaying her usual perceptiveness. Do you want to stay? The question deserved honest consideration. The research position was professionally exciting, cutting-edge work with global impact potential. The university environment was intellectually stimulating and remarkably free from the gender politics that sometimes plagued American academic medicine. Our daily life had found a comfortable rhythm that balanced work, education, and exploration. But permanent relocation would mean significant trade-offs as well. Lily would grow up with limited direct connection to her extended family, despite the tentative improvements in our long-distance relationships. Her cultural identity would become increasingly international, neither fully American nor Japanese. My own career would develop along a different trajectory than I had originally envisioned. I think I do want to stay, I answered truthfully. The work I'm doing here matters. The life we've built feels right for us. But it's a big decision that affects both of us, so we should think about it carefully. Lily nodded solemnly. We should make a list of pros and cons. That's what my science teacher says to do for important decisions. Over the next week, we did exactly that, creating a detailed analysis of what permanent relocation would mean for both of us. Lily approached the exercise with endearing seriousness, carefully recording points in her neat handwriting. Pros. Better school with kids from everywhere. Nobody thinks our family is weird. Ramen shop with starfish cakes. Learning 2 languages makes my brain stronger. Ms. Hinata said so. The Science Museum has robot demonstrations every month. Cons. Far away from Aunt Judy. Can she visit us? Have to learn harder kanji characters next year. Sometimes miss pizza from Angelo's. Hard to see constellation Orion in summer here because it's different than Boston sky. My own list was more complex but followed similar themes. The professional opportunity was exceptional, our quality of life was good, and the freedom from Boston's social constraints had been genuinely liberating. The primary disadvantages centered around distance from select family members I still valued, particularly my Aunt Judy, who had been consistently supportive throughout my life. and certain cultural comforts of America that remained familiar and appealing. As I weighed these factors, I realized that my hesitation wasn't really about the practical pros and cons. It was about a more fundamental question. Was I choosing Tokyo because it was truly the right environment for our future, or was I simply running from Boston's painful past? The distinction mattered. A decision based primarily on avoidance would eventually reveal its weakness. A decision based on positive choice would provide a foundation for genuine growth and fulfillment. To gain clarity, I scheduled an evening call with Aunt Judy, the one family member whose perspective I trusted completely. At 72, she remained sharp-minded and remarkably progressive in her thinking, having spent her career as a civil rights attorney before retiring to teach constitutional law at Boston College. "A permanent position? That's wonderful recognition of your work, Alexandra," she said when I explained the situation. "But you're wondering if staying in Tokyo means you're still running from unresolved family issues." Her directness made me smile. "Something like that. I want to make sure I'm moving towards something positive rather than just away from something negative." Aunt Judy considered this thoughtfully. "Do you remember when you were about 14 and had that terrible falling out with your debate team partner right before regionals?" "Vaguely," I admitted, unsure of the connection. "You wanted to quit the team because working with her was so unpleasant. I suggested instead that you focus on why you joined debate in the first place, because you loved the intellectual challenge and the structured analysis of complex issues." The memory clarified. "And I stayed on the team but requested a different partner for the next semester." "Exactly," Aunt Judy said. "You didn't let a negative relationship define your relationship with debate itself. You reclaimed your original purpose." "So you're saying—" "I'm saying that leaving Boston was necessary to break unhealthy patterns, but staying in Tokyo should be about what Tokyo offers, not what Boston lacks." She paused. "From everything you've told me about your work there, the school community, and how Lily is thriving, it sounds like Tokyo has become a positive choice in its own right." Her perspective crystallized my thinking. The initial move to Tokyo had indeed been partially motivated by escape, but our life there had evolved into something meaningful and valuable on its own terms. We weren't defining ourselves in opposition to Boston anymore. We were simply living authentically in a place that supported our growth. "I think you're right," I told her. "When I imagine our future now, I see it happening here. Not because it's not Boston, but because it's where we've found a sense of belonging." "Then I think you have your answer," Aunt Judy replied warmly. "And Alexandra? I'm planning a trip to Asia next spring for my retirement celebration. I expect a comprehensive tour of Tokyo from my favorite great-niece." The knowledge that Aunt Judy would visit provided the final piece of reassurance I needed. We could maintain meaningful connections with those family members who truly valued us while building our primary life in a community that supported our authentic selves. The following week, I accepted the permanent position as research director, signing a 3-year contract with options for renewal. That same day, I composed an email to my parents, informing them of our decision to remain in Tokyo long-term, but expressing hope that our evolving long-distance relationship would continue. I extended an explicit invitation for them to visit when my father's health permitted, while clearly establishing that this was an invitation to witness our life, rather than an opportunity to evaluate or judge it. Their response, which came from my father rather than my mother, surprised me with its restraint and apparent acceptance. "Alexandra, while we naturally wish you and Lily were closer geographically, we respect your decision to build a life that works for both of you. The research position sounds like an exceptional opportunity that recognizes your considerable talents. My cardiologist has indicated that international travel should be possible by next spring, assuming my recovery continues as expected. Perhaps we might discuss a visit then, if that would be welcome. In the meantime, would it be possible to establish a more regular schedule for video calls with Lily? Our conversations about astronomy have become a highlight of my week, and I would value the opportunity to be more consistently present in her life, even from a distance. Your father. The message represented a significant shift from previous dynamics, acknowledging my professional accomplishment, respecting our autonomy, requesting rather than demanding connection with Lily, and positioning himself as the one who needed to fit into our established life rather than expecting us to accommodate his expectations. Whether this change represented genuine growth or simply resigned acceptance of circumstances he couldn't control remained to be seen. But it offered the possibility of a new type of relationship, one defined by mutual respect rather than power dynamics or conditional approval. As Lily and I celebrated our decision with a special dinner at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the Tokyo skyline, I reflected on how far we had come from that moment in my parents' dining room, staring at the family portrait that excluded my daughter. We had traveled literally and figuratively to the other side of the world, transforming a painful rejection into an opportunity for reinvention. "Look, Mom," Lily pointed excitedly to the darkening sky above the city lights. "You can see Venus tonight." I followed her gaze to the bright planet emerging in the twilight. "The planet of transformation," I noted, remembering my college astronomy course. "And new beginnings," Lily added, quoting from one of her astronomy books. "That's us, right? We had a transformation and a new beginning." "That's exactly right," I agreed, putting my arm around her shoulders. "And the beautiful thing about new beginnings is that they can happen anywhere, any time we're brave enough to create them." As the Tokyo skyline illuminated around us, I felt a profound sense of peace. We had not merely escaped a toxic situation. We had created a new reality where both Lily and I could thrive on our own terms. The journey hadn't been easy, and it certainly wasn't complete. Establishing healthy boundaries rarely is. But we had fundamentally altered the trajectory of our lives by refusing to accept conditional love as an adequate substitute for genuine acceptance. The mortgage payments I had canceled had purchased something far more valuable than real estate. They had bought our freedom to define family on our own terms, to build connections based on authentic appreciation rather than obligation or appearance. And in that freedom, both Lily and I had discovered versions of ourselves that had always existed but had never been fully seen or valued in the narrow confines of Sullivan family expectations. Our new beginning wasn't about erasing the past, but about ensuring it no longer controlled our future. It wasn't about perfect resolution, but about creating enough distance, both physical and emotional, to establish healthier patterns. Most importantly, it wasn't about revenge or punishment, but about reclaiming our inherent worth and creating a life where that worth was recognized and celebrated. As Venus shimmered brighter against the deepening blue of the Tokyo sky, I made a silent promise to myself and to Lily. Our story would no longer be defined by exclusion, but by the conscious choice to include only those who truly saw and valued us. Our worth would no longer be measured by others' approval, but by our own authentic achievements and connections. And our family portrait would be painted not by bloodlines or social conventions, but by genuine love and mutual respect. That, after all, was the true meaning of family. Not who appears in a photograph, but who remains in your heart, even when the road ahead leads to unexpected destinations. Our second year in Tokyo unfolded with an unexpected rhythm. The novelty of expatriate life mellowed into comfortable routine, and our initial defensive vigilance gradually relaxed. Lily had become conversationally fluent in Japanese, her natural linguistic abilities outpacing my more methodical progress with the language. My research team had published breakthrough findings in the Lancet Neurology, earning international recognition and substantial grant funding for our continued work. Life had settled into a pattern that felt right, challenging professionally, enriching personally, and most importantly, emotionally healthy for both Lily and me. We had created a home that reflected our authentic interests rather than conforming to external expectations, filling our apartment with astronomy books, scientific models, and artifacts from our weekend explorations of Japanese culture. It was during this period of stability that the email arrived from Richard, its formal subject line, "Proposed family meeting in Tokyo," immediately setting off warning signals. My older brother rarely initiated communication, preferring to let our parents manage family relations while he focused on his corporate law practice. "Alexandra, I hope this message finds you and Lily well. Your recent research publication was quite impressive. Several partners at my firm who represent pharmaceutical clients mentioned it specifically during our last board meeting. I am writing regarding a family matter that requires discussion. Father's cardiac health has stabilized, but the financial situation at home has deteriorated. The mortgage you previously managed remains a significant concern, and Mother has been forced to consider selling family heirlooms to maintain their lifestyle. Father, Mother, Thomas, and I propose a family meeting to discuss sustainable solutions. As I have business in Seoul next month, I could easily extend my trip to include Tokyo. Would you be amenable to hosting the family for discussions?" "We would. Arrange our own accommodations, of course. Please advise regarding your availability. Regards, Richard." I read the message twice, my initial apprehension giving way to analytical clarity. The carefully crafted language revealed more than my brother likely intended. The mention of my research success followed immediately by the financial request was a transparent attempt to establish connection before making demands. The suggestion that my parents were selling heirlooms, emotional leverage designed to trigger family loyalty. The proposed location in Tokyo rather than requesting my return to Boston. A superficial accommodation that nonetheless expected me to host a family intervention on my own territory. Most tellingly, the email came from Richard rather than my parents, suggesting they had appointed him as negotiator, likely because his professional skills made him the most formidable advocate for their interests. As a corporate attorney specializing in mergers and acquisitions, Richard excelled at identifying leverage points and structuring agreements that appeared balanced while ultimately favoring his clients. I set my phone down on my desk at the research center, gazing out at the university's meticulously maintained Zen garden visible from my window. 2 years ago, I might have immediately felt guilty and responsible. I might have agreed reflexively, eager to smooth family tensions at my own expense. But Tokyo had taught me the value of thoughtful pauses, the power of ma, as the Japanese called it, the meaningful space between actions where true wisdom often emerged. For 3 days, I carried Richard's email in my mind without responding, examining it from different angles while continuing my normal routine. I discussed it with Emma during our weekly lunch, appreciating her characteristic directness. "They're trying to get back into your wallet," she observed bluntly, stirring her miso soup. "The question is why now? And why the full family delegation?" "The timing aligns with several factors," I replied, thinking aloud. "My research grant received significant press coverage. My father's retirement savings were likely depleted by medical expenses, and the mortgage on the Beacon Hill house would be approaching renewal terms, possibly with rate increases." Emma raised an eyebrow. "You're analyzing this like one of your research problems." "It helps me maintain emotional distance," I admitted. "Otherwise, the old patterns of guilt and obligation start creeping back in." "And what does your analysis tell you about their intentions?" I considered carefully. "I believe they want to re-establish the previous financial arrangement without addressing the underlying relationship issues. The family meeting format suggests they're preparing a united front rather than genuine dialogue." "So what are you going to do?" Emma asked. The question lingered as I walked home that evening, stopping at Lily's favorite bakery to pick up melon pan for her after-school snack. What did I want from this situation? Not avoidance. That wasn't sustainable long-term. Not capitulation. I wouldn't return to financial support without addressing the fundamental dynamics. Perhaps, I realized with sudden clarity, what I wanted was honesty. A a transparent conversation about both money and values that acknowledged reality rather than preserving comfortable illusions. When I arrived home, Lily was practicing Japanese calligraphy at our kitchen table, her small face a study in concentration as she carefully formed each character. I watched her for a moment, struck by how much she had grown in our time here, not just physically, but in confidence and self-awareness. "Is everything okay, Mom?" she asked, looking up and immediately sensing my preoccupation. "Everything's fine, sweetheart," I assured her. "I just have a decision to make about your grandparents and uncles possibly visiting Tokyo." Her brush paused mid-stroke. "Are they coming to take us back to Boston?" The immediacy of her concern revealed that, despite our comfortable life here, some insecurity lingered. "No, absolutely not. They want to talk about some family business, that's all. And I haven't decided yet whether to agree to the meeting." She carefully set her brush in its holder, giving the question her full attention. "Do you want to see them?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out," I answered honestly. Lily considered this with characteristic thoughtfulness. "Ms. Himura says that difficult conversations are like pulling out splinters. They hurt, but leaving them in hurts more in the end." I smiled at her 8-year-old wisdom, borrowed from her insightful Japanese teacher. "That's pretty good advice." "Also," she added, returning to her calligraphy, "if they come here, we know where the exits are." Her strategic thinking startled a laugh from me. "You've been spending too much time with Emma's daughter. That sounds like Sydney's tactical approach to everything." "Sydney says always maintain home court advantage," Lily confirmed solemnly, though her eyes twinkled with humor. That evening, after Lily went to bed, I drafted my response to Richard. "Richard, thank you for your email. I'm willing to meet with the family in Tokyo under the following conditions. 1. The meeting will take place at a neutral location, either a conference room at my university or a private room at a restaurant, not in my home. 2. Lily will not be present for financial discussions, though she would be happy to see everyone for a family dinner afterward if the initial meeting goes well. 3. Before discussing any financial arrangements, we will address the family dynamics that necessitated my departure from Boston, specifically the consistent exclusion of Lily from full family participation. 4. I will not make any financial decisions. During the meeting itself, I will listen to proposals and consider them afterward. If these terms are acceptable, I'm available the weekend of May 15-16. Please let me know which day would work best for everyone's travel schedules. Alexandra. I sent the email before I could second-guess myself, then closed my laptop and prepared for bed. For the first time in my adult life, I had established clear boundaries with my family without anger or defensiveness, simply stating what I needed for the interaction to be healthy and productive. It felt like another milestone in my ongoing journey toward authentic self-advocacy. Richard's response came the next morning, brief, professional, and notably lacking his usual subtle attempts at manipulation. Alexandra, your terms are reasonable. We will arrange for a conference room at the Grand Hyatt Tokyo on Saturday, May 15th at 10 a.m. The hotel concierge will contact you regarding access details. Father has expressed interest in visiting Tokyo's National Museum of Nature and Science with Lily after our discussion, if that would be agreeable. He mentioned something about their shared interest in astronomy. We will arrive Friday evening and depart Sunday afternoon. Caroline will not be joining us due to prior commitments with her charity board. Regards, Richard. The absence of Caroline, Richards. Status-conscious wife who had been particularly dismissive of Lily was an unexpected relief. My sister-in-law's cutting remarks and thinly veiled judgments had always added an additional layer of tension to family gatherings. Her decision to prioritize her social obligations over the Tokyo trip suggested the family recognized that her presence might hinder their objectives. More surprising was my father's specific request to visit the Science Museum with Lily. Their email exchanges about astronomy had continued regularly over the past year, gradually evolving from brief fact-sharing to more substantive discussions. Still, this explicit desire for one-on-one time with his granddaughter represented a significant shift from his previous emotional distance. As the meeting date approached, I prepared methodically, reviewing my financial situation with my advisor, to understand exactly what I could or could not offer my parents without compromising Lily's security or our own future. I also spoke with my therapist, a British expatriate I'd been seeing monthly since our move to Tokyo, about strategies for maintaining emotional boundaries during the discussion. Think of yourself as the chief negotiator for Team Alexandra and Lily, Dr. Bennett suggested during our session. Your job isn't to make everyone happy. It's to represent your team's best interests while finding sustainable solutions. That's helpful, I acknowledged. I tend to slip into daughter mode rather than staying in adult mode when my family's involved. Another approach is to imagine what advice you'd give Lily if she were facing a similar situation as an adult, she added. We're often better at advocating for others than for ourselves. That mental framework, advocating for future Lily by modeling healthy boundaries, proved particularly clarifying as I continued my preparations. The day before their arrival, I sat down with Lily to prepare her for the upcoming family visit. We were having dinner at our small kitchen table, the evening light casting long shadows across the room as spring rain tapped gently against the windows. Your grandparents and uncles are coming tomorrow, I reminded her. They'll be staying at a hotel, but we'll see them for the family meeting and then probably spend some time together afterward. Lily nodded, picking thoughtfully at her rice. Will they be different here than they were in Boston? The question revealed her emotional intelligence, her recognition that context shapes behavior. They might be, I answered honestly. Sometimes being in a new place helps people act differently, but I want you to remember something important. She looked up, giving me her full attention. You don't have to earn anyone's love, not even family, I told her firmly. You deserve to be treated with kindness and respect exactly as you are. If anyone, even grandpa or grandma, makes you feel uncomfortable or less than, you can tell me immediately, and we'll address it. What if they want us to move back to Boston? She asked, voicing the concern that clearly still worried her, despite my previous reassurances. That's not happening, I stated unequivocally. Our home is here now. My job is here, your school is here, our friends are here. They might want to discuss some financial arrangements with me, but that has nothing to do with where we live. She seemed satisfied with this answer, returning to her dinner with renewed appetite. After a moment, she looked up again. Can I wear my Tokyo Astronomical Society t-shirt when we see Grandpa? He said in his email that he wants to see the solar system exhibition at the Science Museum. I think that's a perfect choice, I assured her, touched by her thoughtfulness even toward people who had caused her pain. Saturday morning arrived with unexpectedly perfect weather, clear skies and mild temperatures that showcased Tokyo at its springtime best. I dressed carefully in a professional but casual outfit that projected confidence without seeming defensive. Dark tailored slacks, a silk blouse in my favorite shade of teal, and low heels that were comfortable enough for museum walking later. Lily chose her astronomy t-shirt as planned, paired with her favorite star-patterned skirt and the sparkly sneakers Emma's daughter had helped her select on a recent shopping trip. You look like you're going to a business meeting, not seeing family, Lily observed as I applied minimal makeup. In some ways, it is a business meeting, I explained, realizing the truth of this statement as I said it. When family relationships involve financial decisions, it's important to maintain clear boundaries. Looking professional helps me remember that. We arrived at the Grand Hyatt precisely at 9:55 a.m., following the Japanese custom of punctuality, without earliness that I'd adopted during our time here. The hotel's luxurious modern design, all sleek lines and understated elegance, provided an appropriately neutral territory for our discussion. A staff member escorted us to a private conference room where my family already waited. The moment we entered created an almost cinematic freeze frame. My father, thinner than I remembered, and with notably more gray in his hair, standing by the window. My mother, impeccably dressed as always, but with new worry lines etched around. Her eyes, arranging a tea service. Richard, checking his phone with the same intense focus he'd always applied to his electronic devices, and Thomas, the most visibly excited to see us, half rising from his chair. "Alexandra," my father spoke first, his voice carrying the same authoritative tone I remembered despite his frailer appearance. "And Lily, you both look well." "Hello, father," I replied, keeping my tone neutral but not cold. "The flight from Boston was comfortable, I hope." "As comfortable as 15 hours in an aluminum tube can be," Richard answered, finally looking up from his phone. "Tokyo appears to agree with you." My mother approached cautiously, as if unsure of the appropriate greeting. "Alexandra, you look lovely, very Japanese in style." I suppressed a smile at what she clearly intended as a compliment, despite its cultural obtuseness. "Thank you, Mother. Lily, say hello to everyone." "Konnichiwa," Lily said politely, following with English. "Hello, Grandma, Grandpa, Uncle Richard, Uncle Thomas." Thomas broke the awkward formality, crossing the room to give Lily a genuine smile. "Hey there, astronomy expert. Your grandpa tells me you've been learning about Japanese star legends. That sounds pretty cool." "They have completely different constellations," Lily responded enthusiastically, her natural warmth overcoming her initial hesitation. "Well, the stars are the same, but they make different pictures with them." "I've brought something for you," my father interjected, reaching into a leather portfolio beside him and withdrawing a carefully wrapped package. "Perhaps you could open it later, after our business discussions." "Thank you," Lily replied, her ingrained politeness overriding her obvious curiosity about the gift. I glanced at my watch. "Lily, remember our plan? Ms. Himura is waiting downstairs in the cafe to take you to your calligraphy lesson. We'll all meet up for lunch at 12:30, and then you and Grandpa can visit the Science Museum." I had deliberately arranged for Lily's regular Saturday calligraphy teacher to occupy her during our family meeting, providing both a trusted caregiver and a continued sense of normal routine, despite the unusual circumstances. After Lily departed, with Ms. Himura, the atmosphere in the conference room subtly shifted. Pleasantries and performance gave way to the real purpose of our gathering. I took a seat at one end of the conference table, deliberately choosing not to sit at either side, position that would have flanked my father's customary head-of-table location. "Shall we begin?" I suggested, opening my portfolio to reveal a legal pad with neatly organized notes. "I believe we're here to discuss the financial situation regarding my parents' home and potentially other matters." Richard raised an eyebrow at my businesslike approach, but nodded. "Yes, the situation has become untenable. The Beacon Hill Properties mortgage has adjusted to a significantly higher rate, and Father's medical expenses have depleted much of their retirement reserves. We've had to let go of Meredith," my mother added, referring to their longtime housekeeper with genuine distress. "And we're considering selling the summer house in Nantucket." "I understand these changes have been difficult," I acknowledged, keeping my tone sympathetic but measured. "Before we discuss potential financial arrangements, however, I'd like to address the family dynamics that led to my departure from Boston. As I mentioned in my email to Richard, that conversation needs to happen first." My father cleared his throat, exchanging glances with my mother. "Alexandra, the past is the past. We're here to discuss practical matters, not rehash old grievances." "They're not old grievances if they haven't been resolved," I countered calmly. "And they're directly relevant to any financial discussion. I stopped supporting the mortgage because I couldn't financially enable a family system that consistently hurt my daughter. If we don't address that underlying issue, we'll just be putting a bandage on a deeper wound. Richard's expression tightened with impatience. We acknowledged that there were oversights regarding Lily's inclusion in family events. But surely, after 2 years, we can move beyond that. 2 years doesn't erase 8 years of exclusion, I replied. And characterizing deliberate choices as oversights minimizes both the actions themselves and their impact on Lily. What exactly do you want from us, Alexandra? My mother asked, a hint of her usual defensiveness creeping into her voice. We've made efforts to connect with Lily through emails and video calls. Your father has developed a genuine interest in astronomy to find common ground with her. What more are you looking for? The question was revealing, framing reconciliation as a transaction with clearly defined parameters, rather than an ongoing process of changed behavior and rebuilt trust. It highlighted exactly why we needed this conversation before any financial discussion. I want acknowledgement, I said simply. Not excuses or justifications. Just honest acknowledgement that Lily was treated as less than her cousins because of the circumstances of her birth and my choice to raise her as a single mother. I want recognition that this treatment was harmful and wrong. And I want a commitment to genuine change moving forward, not because of financial necessity, but because it's the right thing to do. A heavy silence fell over the room. Thomas shifted uncomfortably in his chair, while Richard maintained his impassive lawyer's expression. My mother looked down at her perfectly manicured hands, avoiding eye contact. It was my father who finally broke the silence, his voice carrying an unfamiliar note of uncertainty. You're asking us to admit we were wrong. Yes, I confirmed, because you were. Another long pause followed before he spoke again, each word seeming carefully chosen. The Sullivan family has certain traditions, expectations. When you chose your path, it wasn't what we had envisioned for you. It wasn't what we believed was best. That may explain your disappointment in my choices, I acknowledged. It doesn't justify projecting that disappointment onto an innocent child. My father nodded slowly, the gesture containing more genuine reflection than I had seen from him in years. No, it doesn't. He straightened in his chair, meeting my gaze directly. We were wrong, Alexandra. I was wrong. I allowed my rigid expectations and concern for family appearance to override the simple fact that Lily is my granddaughter, deserving of the same love and inclusion as any other grandchild. The straightforward admission, free from qualifications or deflections, momentarily stunned me into silence. Even Richard looked surprised, perhaps having prepared counter-arguments for a more defensive response. My mother's eyes filled with tears, whether from my father's unexpected concession or her own emotions, I couldn't tell. We were cruel, she said quietly. Not intentionally, but through 1,000 small exclusions that must have felt deliberate to a child. I didn't allow myself to see it that way because acknowledging it would mean facing my own failure as a grandmother. And as uncles, we were complicit, Thomas added, looking genuinely remorseful. We noticed the pattern but didn't challenge it. I told myself it wasn't my place to interfere, but that was just taking the easy way out. Richard remained silent, his expression unreadable behind his professional mask. I waited, curious whether he would join this unexpected moment of family accountability. My role was particularly problematic, he finally said, each word precise as if navigating a challenging legal argument. I not only failed to advocate for Lily's inclusion, but actively reinforced the family hierarchy through Caroline's behavior and my own choices regarding the cousins' interactions. It was professionally ironic, as I spend my career advocating for clients while failing to advocate for my own niece. The collective acknowledgement, genuine and unforced, created a seismic shift in the emotional atmosphere of the room. For perhaps the first time in our family history, We were having an honest conversation about harmful patterns without denial or deflection. "Thank you," I said simply. "This acknowledgement matters. To me, and eventually to Lily when she's old. Enough to fully understand it." "What happens now?" my mother asked hesitantly. "How do we fix this?" "We can't erase the past," I replied, "but we can create a different future. It starts with consistently treating Lily with the same respect, inclusion, and consideration as every other family member. Not just when it's convenient or when there's a financial incentive." My father nodded solemnly. "I've come to treasure my astronomy conversations with Lily. They began as an attempt to connect, but I've found myself genuinely fascinated by her knowledge and perspective. She sees the universe with such wonder." "She does," I agreed, feeling a careful optimism begin to take root. "She's an extraordinary child in many ways. She's also just a normal 8-year-old who deserves to feel secure in her family's love." "I want that opportunity," my father said with unexpected emotion. "To be the grandfather she deserves, regardless of what happens with the financial situation. That's why I asked about the science museum visit. Not as leverage, but because I genuinely want to share her interest." This sentiment, prioritizing relationship over financial negotiation, represented such a fundamental shift from our family's usual approach that I felt momentarily disoriented. We had entered this meeting, with carefully constructed positions and expectations, only to find ourselves in unfamiliar territory of authentic vulnerability. "I appreciate that," I said, taking a deep breath before transitioning to the next phase of our discussion. "Now, let's talk about the practical matters that brought you to Tokyo. I've prepared some options regarding the mortgage situation, but I want to be clear that any financial support will come with explicit expectations regarding family dynamics." Richard straightened, clearly more comfortable returning to financial territory. "We've outlined several possible arrangements," he began, sliding a folder across the table. "Before we review specifics," I interjected, "I want to establish my non-negotiable parameters. First, I will not resume payments on the existing mortgage arrangement. That chapter is closed." My mother's face fell, while my father remained stoically attentive. "However," I continued, "I am willing to consider establishing a family trust that would serve multiple purposes, providing housing stability for my parents, creating educational funds for all grandchildren equally, and potentially preserving certain family assets for future generations." "A trust?" Richard's interest was immediately piqued. "That's actually quite sensible from both tax and asset protection perspectives. I've consulted with financial advisors here in Tokyo and—" "In the U.S. Scott," I explained. "A properly structured trust would address the immediate housing concerns while also ensuring long-term equitable distribution of family resources." For the next hour, we discussed financial details: the Beacon Hill house's current market value, outstanding mortgage balance, my parents' monthly expenses, and various trust structure options. The conversation remained remarkably focused and collaborative, lacking the undercurrents of manipulation and guilt that had characterized previous family financial discussions. By the time we broke for lunch to meet Lily, we had reached a preliminary agreement. I would establish a family trust that would purchase the Beacon Hill home from my parents, allowing them lifetime residence rights while providing monthly income from the trust's other investments. The trust would be structured to eventually benefit all grandchildren equally, with provisions for education, healthcare, and eventual asset distribution. As we gathered our materials, my father approached me privately while the others headed to the elevator. "Alexandra," he said, his voice carrying an unfamiliar note of humility, "I want you to know something. Even if you had decided against any financial arrangement, I meant what I said about wanting a relationship with Lily. The past 2 years of correspondence have shown me what I was missing." "I believe you," I replied, surprised to realize I genuinely did. "But rebuilding trust takes time and consistency. Today is a beginning, not a resolution. He nodded, acknowledging the truth of this statement. She reminds me of you at that age, he added with unexpected fondness. The same. Curiosity, the same determination to understand how things work. I missed appreciating those qualities in you because they didn't fit my narrow definition of success. I don't want to make the same mistake with her. As we made our way downstairs to meet Lily for lunch, I reflected on the unexpected evolution of our family meeting. We had come together to negotiate a financial transaction, but had somehow found ourselves engaged in a more fundamental renegotiation of family values and relationships. Whether this shift would prove lasting remained to be seen, but for the first time in years, I felt cautiously hopeful about my family's capacity for growth. Lily was waiting in the hotel lobby with Ms. Himura, clutching her calligraphy practice sheets with evident pride. When she spotted us, her initial expression was guarded, a painful reminder of the protective emotional armor she had developed in response to past family interactions. "How was your lesson, sweetheart?" I asked, accepting her careful artwork. With appropriate admiration. "Ms. Himura says my brush control is improving," she replied, glancing cautiously at her grandparents and uncles. "Are you done with your meeting?" "Yes, and everyone is looking forward to having lunch with you," I assured her. "And then you and Grandpa are going to visit the Science Museum, right?" My father stepped forward, crouching slightly to meet Lily at eye level, a gesture I had never seen him make with any of his grandchildren before. "I've been reading about the special exhibition on comparative planetary atmospheres," he said, his tone warm and genuinely engaged. "Your email mentioned you were particularly interested in that." Lily's face brightened with surprised pleasure. "Yes, they have actual meteorite samples and models showing how different gases create different kinds of weather on each planet. I'm looking forward to learning about it from an expert," my father replied, offering his hand to Lily with formal politeness that acknowledged her as an individual rather than treating her as a child to be managed. As we walked to the restaurant, a child-friendly place I had carefully selected for its combination of Western and Japanese options, I observed the subtle shifts in family dynamics. My mother made a genuine effort to ask Lily questions about her Japanese studies, listening attentively to her responses. Richard remained somewhat reserved, but treated Lily with the same respectful attention he typically reserved for adults. Thomas, always the most naturally warm of my brothers, shared jokes and stories that soon had Lily giggling. The change wasn't miraculous or complete. Decades of established patterns couldn't transform in a single morning. But it was authentic. I could see my family members consciously working to interact differently, catching themselves when old habits emerged and recalibrating their approaches. During lunch, my father finally invited Lily to open the gift he had brought. She carefully unwrapped the package to reveal a beautiful brass telescope, compact but clearly of professional quality. "It's portable so you can take it to different viewing locations," my father explained as Lily examined it with wide-eyed wonder. "And it has special filters for solar observation with proper safety precautions." "Is it really mine?" Lily asked, her voice filled with awe. "Absolutely," my father confirmed. "Every astronomer needs proper equipment. Perhaps we could test it this evening if the skies remain clear. Tokyo must offer different viewing perspectives than Boston." "The light pollution is actually worse here," Lily informed him seriously, already sliding into the comfortable academic exchange they had developed through their correspondence. "But there's an astronomy club that takes weekend trips to Nagano Prefecture, where the mountain viewing is excellent." As I watched them discuss optimal telescope positioning and comparative urban light mapping, I felt a complex emotion I couldn't immediately name. It wasn't quite forgiveness. That would require more time and consistent change. It wasn't exactly reconciliation. Our family had too many fractured places for simple healing. What I felt, I realized, was possibility. The potential for evolving relationships based on genuine connection rather than obligation or appearance. The financial arrangements would provide practical stability, But this moment of authentic engagement between my father and daughter offered something more valuable. The foundation for meaningful bonds based on mutual interest and respect rather than mere biological connection. After lunch, as Lily and my father prepared to depart for the science museum, I pulled my daughter aside for a brief check-in. "Are you comfortable going with Grandpa?" I asked quietly. "I can come along if you prefer." "I think it's okay," she replied with characteristic thoughtfulness. "He seems different here. More interested in actual me, not just idea me." Her perceptive observation, distinguishing between being valued for who she was versus what she represented, highlighted both the pain of past exclusion and the potential for new understanding. "I'll have my phone," I assured her. "Call or text if you need anything at all." As I watched them leave together, my father conscientiously slowing his pace to match Lily's shorter strides, listening intently as she explained something with animated gestures, I felt a cautious optimism about this new chapter in our family story. The family meeting that had begun as a financial negotiation had evolved into something more fundamental, a reckoning with harmful patterns and the tentative construction of healthier dynamics. The mortgage payments I had canceled 2 years ago had ultimately purchased something more valuable than property. They had bought the leverage needed to demand essential change. "They seem different," Thomas observed, joining me as I watched Lily and my father disappear into a taxi. "Especially Dad. I've never seen him so engaged with any of the grandchildren. I think being forced to examine his priorities has created space for authentic connection," I replied. "Sometimes losing what you take for granted helps you recognize what truly matters." "Like a family that actually functions as a family?" Thomas suggested with surprising insight. "Exactly. Like that," I agreed. "Though we still have a long way to go. But at least we're finally walking in the right direction," my brother said thoughtfully. "Even if it took a canceled mortgage to get us started on the path." As we turned to rejoin my mother and Richard, I reflected on the unexpected wisdom of my brother's observation. Sometimes the most meaningful journeys begin with difficult decisions, with the courage to say no to unhealthy patterns so that something healthier has room to grow. The mortgage payments I had canceled had indeed set a boundary, but more importantly, they had created an opening for something I hadn't dared to imagine 2 years earlier. A family slowly learning to value substance over appearance, authentic connection over social conformity, and the quiet courage of a little girl who had always deserved to be seen. After the family's departure from Tokyo, a subtle but profound transformation began to take shape. The weekend visit had not magically erased decades of ingrained behavior, but it had created fissures in long-established patterns, cracks through which new possibilities were beginning to emerge. Like the kintsugi pottery we had admired at a local exhibition, our family's broken places were being acknowledged and mended, the repair lines visible but creating something potentially more valuable than the original unblemished surface. The financial arrangements proceeded with surprising efficiency. Richard, ever the meticulous attorney, drafted trust documents that balanced protection of assets with equitable distribution principles. My financial advisors in Tokyo reviewed each iteration, suggesting modifications that strengthened both the financial structure and the underlying commitment to fairness. Within 2 months, the Sullivan Family Trust was established, with the Beacon Hill House as its primary asset and professionally managed investments generating monthly income for my parents' living expenses. More remarkable than the financial restructuring, however, was the shift in family communication. My father's emails, once formal and distant, evolved to include personal reflections alongside his astronomy discussions with Lily. My mother began sending actual recipes rather than vague admonitions about proper nutrition. Thomas initiated regular video calls with Lily, genuinely interested in her Japanese school experiences and sharing stories about his own children's activities without the previous undercurrent of comparison. Even Richard showed subtle changes, his communications becoming less transactional and more genuinely engaged. In a particularly revealing email following the trust establishment, he wrote, "Alexandra, the trust documents are finalized and executed. All parties have received copies for their records. On a personal note, I've been reflecting on our Tokyo discussions. Your willingness to create a structured solution despite past difficulties demonstrated exceptional maturity. More importantly, your insistence on addressing the underlying relationship issues before financial matters was ultimately correct, though I admit I initially viewed it as an unnecessary complication. Caroline and I have had several conversations about family dynamics since my return. We're making a conscious effort to examine how we've contributed to harmful patterns, particularly regarding the children's relationships with their cousins. It's uncomfortable work, but necessary. Richard." The acknowledgement of discomfort, so uncharacteristic of my typically polished and controlled older brother, signaled genuine reflection rather than strategic positioning. Similar indicators of authentic change appeared in various family interactions over the following months, sometimes in unexpected ways. One Tuesday afternoon, nearly 4 months after the Tokyo visit, I received a call from Caroline, an unprecedented event, as my sister-in-law had never contacted me directly before. "Alexandra," she began without preamble, her voice carrying its usual crisp efficiency but lacking its former edge. "I hope I'm not disturbing your workday." "Not at all," I replied, setting aside my research notes. "Is everything all right?" "Yes, perfectly fine. I'm calling about Emma," she said, mentioning my oldest niece. "She has a school assignment requiring research on women in science, particularly medicine. She specifically asked if she could interview you about your epilepsy research." I paused, momentarily taken aback by this unexpected request. Of course I'd be happy to speak with her. That's thoughtful of her to consider me. "It was entirely her idea," Caroline confirmed, a hint of something like embarrassment coloring her tone. "She found an article about your research team's breakthrough in her school's science database and realized the Dr. Sullivan mentioned was her aunt. She was quite impressed." The conversation continued with practical arrangements for a video interview that would accommodate both the Tokyo-Boston time difference and Emma's school schedule. Throughout our exchange, Caroline maintained a respectful collegiality that would have seemed impossible a year earlier. Just before ending the call, she added something that further demonstrated the family's ongoing evolution. "Alexandra, I owe you an apology. My treatment of Lily over the years was inexcusable. I allowed social conventions and appearances to override basic kindness. Since Richard returned from Tokyo, we've been having family discussions about our values and the example we're setting for our children. I want you to know that I'm committed to changing how I relate to both you and Lily, moving forward." The apology, delivered without defensiveness or qualification, indicated that our family's reckoning had continued beyond the Tokyo meeting, rippling through relationships in ways I hadn't anticipated. Caroline's acknowledgement wouldn't immediately erase years of subtle cruelty, but it represented a significant step toward healthier family dynamics. Emma's interview itself proved surprisingly delightful. My 13-year-old niece had prepared thoughtful questions about my research methodology, the challenges of working across cultural and language barriers in an international team, and the potential applications of our findings for pediatric patients. Her genuine interest and intelligence reminded me that despite the dysfunctional family system she'd been raised in, she was developing her own values and perspectives. "Aunt Alexandra," she asked toward the end of our conversation, "why did you decide to move to Tokyo? Was it just for the research position?" The question contained layers of potential meaning. Was she genuinely curious, repeating family narratives about my departure, or perhaps seeking understanding about family dynamics she was beginning to perceive with adolescent clarity? "The research opportunity was extraordinary," I answered honestly, "but my decision involved multiple factors. Sometimes creating distance helps us build healthier relationships and perspectives. And sometimes finding the right environment allows both professional and personal growth in ways that wouldn't be possible otherwise. Emma nodded thoughtfully. Dad's been different since he visited you. More present, I guess. He's actually coming to my debate tournaments instead of just asking about the results. Her observation confirmed that the changes I'd witnessed weren't merely performance for my benefit, but were manifesting in daily family life. Richard's willingness to prioritize presence over accomplishment represented a fundamental shift in his approach to parenting, one that might eventually disrupt the achievement-oriented family culture that had caused such damage to Lily and me. These evolving family dynamics coincided with significant developments in our Tokyo life. Lily turned 9, celebrating with a planetarium party attended by a diverse group of international school friends. My research team secured additional funding to expand our genetic markers study to include patients from Southeast Asian countries, establishing collaborations with medical centers in Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. Our apartment began to feel too small for our growing collection of books, science equipment, and Japanese art, prompting consideration of a more permanent housing arrangement. "What do you think about buying an actual house?" I asked Lily one Saturday morning as we navigated our increasingly cramped living room. "Something with a small garden and maybe a dedicated space for your telescope?" She looked up from the complex origami pattern she was attempting, her expression thoughtful. "Could we find one near Sydney and Emma's houses? And maybe with a Japanese-style room for my calligraphy practice?" Her question reflected how thoroughly she had integrated into our expatriate community, prioritizing proximity to friends over other considerations, while still valuing Japanese cultural elements she had embraced. "I think we could find something like that in the Denenchofu neighborhood," I suggested. "It's still within reasonable commuting distance to the research center in your school, but has more residential character than our current location." Lily's face brightened with excitement. "Could we have a room for guests too, in case Grandpa and Grandma visit again, or Uncle Thomas, or Aunt Judy?" Her ready inclusion of family members in our future planning revealed an openness I found both touching and concerning. Despite past hurts, she maintained a natural desire for family connection, a resilience I admired but felt protective of, knowing how fragile new family patterns could be. "That's a wonderful thought," I acknowledged. "And yes, having guests. Space would be good for visitors from both Boston and other places." Our house search began casually but evolved into a serious pursuit when we discovered a uniquely suitable property, a Western-style home with Japanese architectural influences, featuring a traditional tatami room, a modern kitchen open to a family space, 3 bedrooms, and most enticingly for Lily, a small rooftop deck ideal for stargazing. Located in a quiet residential area, populated by both Japanese families and expatriates, the neighborhood offered the multicultural community we had come to value. The purchase process involved complex considerations, navigating Japanese real estate regulations as a foreign buyer, evaluating the long-term financial commitment against potential future changes, and contemplating what property ownership in Tokyo signified about our continuing life here. I consulted financial advisors, colleagues who had made similar investments, and most importantly, had serious conversations with Lily about what a permanent move would mean for her relationship with extended family and her understanding of home. "Would buying a house here mean we never go back to Boston?" she asked one evening as we reviewed property photos at our kitchen table. "Not necessarily," I explained. "It would mean Tokyo is our primary home for the foreseeable future. We could still visit Boston occasionally, and family could visit us here more easily if we have proper space for them." "I like it here better," she said with the straightforward honesty of childhood. "People see me for me here, but I still want to know my cousins and grandparents." Her balanced perspective, appreciating our Tokyo life while maintaining openness, to family connections, reflected emotional wisdom beyond her years. It also helped clarify my own thinking about our future. We weren't choosing Tokyo to escape Boston anymore. We were choosing it because it had genuinely become home, offering the right environment for both our individual growth and our shared life. After thorough consideration, I made an offer on the house, which was accepted with minimal negotiation. The subsequent weeks filled with paperwork, meetings with bank representatives, property inspections, and planning for the move. Throughout this process, I maintained our regular communication with family in Boston, sharing updates about our housing decision and extending tentative invitations for future visits once we were settled. My parents' response to news of our house purchase was notably measured, expressing appropriate interest without demanding justification or suggesting disapproval. My father asked practical questions about the property's features and location, while my mother requested photos of different rooms with genuine curiosity rather than evaluative scrutiny. The absence of subtle undermining or judgment marked another small victory in our evolving family dynamics. As our move-in date approached, an unexpected email arrived from my father. "Alexandra, your mother and I have been discussing your new home and would like to offer a housewarming gift. We understand that Lily's astronomy interests would be well served by the rooftop observation deck you mentioned. Would it be appropriate to contribute a more advanced telescope system for that space? We've researched options suitable for Tokyo's viewing conditions and light pollution considerations. Alternatively, if you have another significant item needed for the home, please let us know. We want to contribute something meaningful that would be genuinely useful and appreciated by both of you. Your father." The thoughtfulness of the inquiry, offering options rather than imposing choices, considering practical aspects like local viewing conditions, and explicitly acknowledging both Lily's interests and my input, demonstrated continued evolution in my parents' approach to our relationship. The gift itself was less significant than the considerate manner of offering it, which respected our autonomy while expressing genuine support. I discussed the offer with Lily, who responded with characteristic enthusiasm tempered by newfound wisdom. "The telescope would be amazing, but maybe we should suggest something for the whole family to use when they visit, so they feel welcome too?" Her instinctive move toward connection, considering how to make family feel included in our space, struck me as both generous and perceptive. We decided to suggest a custom dining table large enough for family gatherings, crafted by a local woodworker who specialized in blending Western and Japanese design elements. 2 months later, we moved into our new home, arranging our belongings in spaces that felt purposefully chosen rather than temporarily assigned. The dining table, which arrived shortly after our move, became the literal and symbolic center of our household, a beautiful piece crafted from Japanese hinoki cypress, with subtle inlaid details representing constellations visible in both Tokyo and Boston skies. "It's perfect for science experiments and art projects, too," Lily observed as she spread her materials across the expansive surface. "And for when we have friends over, and family." The ease with which she integrated multiple purposes and people into her vision of our home reflected her natural inclination toward building connections, a quality I had once feared might be damaged by family rejection, but which had proven remarkably resilient. Our housewarming gathering brought together our Tokyo community, colleagues from the research center, families from Lily's school, neighbors, and Japanese friends who had helped us navigate cultural transitions. The diverse group filled our home with multiple languages, cultural perspectives, and genuine warmth that confirmed we had built something meaningful in our adopted city. Among the many congratulatory messages from absent friends and family was a video from Thomas and his children, offering a virtual tour of their recently renovated Boston home, with specific mentions of spaces they hoped Lily would visit someday. The thoughtful inclusion, creating explicit room for Lily in their environment, represented another subtle shift in family patterns. As our Tokyo life settled into its new configuration, professional developments added another dimension to Our evolving story. My expanded research project gained international recognition, leading to speaking invitations at medical conferences across Asia and Europe. Dr. Tanaka encouraged me to consider additional leadership responsibilities within the university's international medical partnerships. Your unique position bridging Western and Eastern medical approaches has proven invaluable, he noted during our quarterly review meeting. The board is impressed with both your research outcomes and your ability to facilitate cross-cultural collaboration. These professional opportunities presented both logistical challenges and philosophical questions about balance. After years of prioritizing stability for Lily, how would increased travel responsibilities affect our carefully constructed home life? What systems would need to be established to maintain consistency during my absences? How could I model healthy ambition without replicating the achievement-focused environment I had consciously left behind? Rather than making unilateral decisions, I initiated open conversations with Lily about these considerations, respecting her stake in our shared life while maintaining appropriate parental boundaries around final decisions. Together, we developed approaches that could accommodate professional growth while preserving the security of our home base. Travel schedules that avoided key school events, reliable care arrangements with trusted adults from our community, regular video communication during separations, and special reconnection rituals upon my return. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.